But if I now could have the speakers of this panel or the panelists here, so Jay, could you come back right after your presentation? And Jani, wonderful indie survival plan earlier, as well as Sami, the approach on children and games, and of course Fredrik. We're all big fans of hardcore games, or at least I know I am. So, the topic of today's panel is to discuss not the past, as we heard in the first presentation of today, but indeed the future, where what should the indie developers do? But before we go to the actual discussion, and I do hope that this is more of a discussion, not just me posing questions, but hopefully everything will flow smoothly. I also want the audience to interrupt us as often as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them right away. There should be a guy with a microphone, hopefully. And just for us all here in the front to get some idea, who are we talking to? Could everyone who is a game developer or wants to be one, can you raise your hand? And then those working on government organizations or some other organizations supporting game industry, can you raise your hand? And did someone not raise their hand? Raise your hand. So what are you guys doing? Sorry? Okay, follow-up. So we also have people interested in games, not necessarily professionally yet, but hopefully in the future. Sorry? Yeah, so definitely a gamer. So, as we had 2 tracks, I'm sure that some of the presentations that we heard, not everyone has heard, so let's go quickly through what was everyone's intake. So, a tagline of 2 sentences from each. What did you talk earlier? So everyone is on the same map.
All right, I'm Sami from Rovio. I spoke about designing for children, so how to incorporate different kinds of services to your game, while taking into account that the audience may be children and there are certain things that you need to take care of, that you're not collecting data or using data or allowing children to have unauthorized contacts with other people. Basically that.
As this was one of the first times Next Games has spoken in public, I just gave a little company presentation, who we are, where we come from, and what we want to accomplish in this industry. Basically, make great games and revolutionize the whole industry by creating the best possible workplace for all the awesome talent. We're ambitious.
Hey, I'm Jani, and my session in the morning was basically that if you're an indie right now, then you should not be doing free-to-play games and maybe not do games on mobile at all.
Well, being from Paradox, I spoke about what is hardcore games and why should you be developing one.
All right. So as we are not looking in the mirror, but in the future, hopefully, if we could warm up by everyone giving your intake, what's the next big trend in game business? If I was to start a company next month, what should be my business plan? Where should I go?
First of all, one of the things I said in my presentation is that following trends is not anything I recommend. I recommend that you do what you feel is the right thing to do, where you can find your inner passion and where you can let it shine in your game. So if you make something that you believe in and that you love, people are going to recognize that. Jumping on a trend because it's zombies or it's space or it's something else, it's not going to work out in the long run. Maybe you can get one hit or so, but it's not going to work out. I took Goat Simulator as a perfect example of that. It's an anti-trend and it's going to sell millions.
Well, my recommendation basically was depending on how you want to proceed. Like, do you use your own money, your savings? Do you have a rich uncle? Do you want to talk to an evil banker or an even eviler VC funder? And how that
Not a VC, at least not yet.
and how that affects your business. So if you do want to kind of bootstrap, maintain your independence, have full control over your IP and so forth, then right now the challenges on mobile are becoming kind of too high to make it there. And that's why the trend that I see happening, it's already happening, and it's probably going to get even faster during this year, is that you will see a lot of studios moving away from treating mobile as their primary focus and instead trying to shoot first in Steam, be it on early access or greenlight, and then use mobile platforms as kind of a secondary opportunity beyond that. Certainly there are these new rumored micro consoles coming, and those may present opportunities, but they are still, well, we don't know enough about them to be certain. But yeah, the trend for now, I think, is that if you want to be indie, consider mobile like twice.
Well, first and foremost, I believe in great games, and there's two ways you can go. You can stay a small indie, which means don't make a lot of costs. Rather, keep your day job and or take a leave of absence or something and work on your game, but don't quit your day job. If you can make a great game with very small budget and very small team, and you get lucky, you can become successful. But don't do it because you want to make money. Do it because you want to create that particular game, whatever it is. The more different from anything out there, the better. Like Goat Simulator, or something even crazier that I can't even imagine. That's your strength. But if you try to compete with the bigger boys, you're probably not going to succeed. But that being said, the luck part of it is not a business plan, so you're not going to get outside investment involved in that. The honeymoon period sort of with indies and mobile is over. It is a pretty brutal market there, and that's because of the discoverability. And I believe PC will follow suit. The price points on PC will start to go down as well, and we'll see more and more free-to-play games there as well on Steam and everywhere else. And it's more and more going to be either it's a super indie, word-of-mouth thing, and it just becomes a phenomenon for one reason or another, or it is a free-to-play service. Now, I'm not saying games like Paradox games are going away, but you probably can't be better than Paradox making Paradox type of games. So make something unique. So that's your two options. The other option is you get a team together that has a good track record, you build an awesome demo, and you find VC money, and then you try to go big. But there's harder and harder to be somewhere in between those two.
Right. What comes to my mind, that I would try to do, of course, if I knew how to run an indie game studio, then I wouldn't be here, but I would be running my own. But one interesting trend that seems to be that there's lots of resistance towards the current way how the free-to-play business model is working. So I would try to figure out a nice way to do it. And I have an example. My kids are really heavy players of the Skylanders. And in there, basically the energy mechanic is not in your face, but you kind of realize that once you have fought the end of the end of the level boss for like 6 times, and your figure needs rest. They don't die in the game, but they need rest. Then you get another figure and another figure. We actually have a bucket full of those figures, and they each cost like 15 euros each. Plus there are certain areas in the game which are not crucial for the gameplay, so you don't have to go there. But they are locked, so there's a gate. You need to have a certain type of a character to enter. So then again, it's kind of a way incentive to invest in one of these figures, which are also collectibles, which is nice. So you get something tangible when you do buy them. So then you get kind of like new content. But it doesn't feel very heavily like somebody is trying to monetize on you, but it's kind of nicer that kind of you buy something that is tangible, it's nice for the kid, they want the characters, plus it unlocks new stuff in the game. But you don't have to use those two. It's kind of, you can go through the whole game without making many investments on these figures.
Yeah, as particularly with 3 of the speakers, we already touched the financing part. Like in a really perfect world, we can all do what we're passionate about. So if I could get an input from everyone, as Jay was pointing on the trends, that it's usually easier to get investors involved if there is a growth, right? Something is growing and being involved there. So for Fredrik, do publishers still finance games on hardcore games? And Jani, particularly, how would anyone out there on the audience, how should they finance their first game?
To answer the first question, do publishers still finance games? Absolutely. I think that you were talking about discoverability, and that is typically where a publisher comes in. Financing and discoverability are the 2 key reasons why people are going to publishers these days. And if you're seeking funding and you're a totally new company, I think that a vertical slice of the product is a very good thing. Sometimes we fund projects based only on a very, very good and solid foundation of an idea, but that is rarely true with unproven teams. But I would start there. Have you found a vertical slice of a product that is really good? You probably have a good shot.
I would contradict a little bit that a vertical slice probably won't be enough to score funding for a free-to-play title. I think but Jay will probably elaborate on that a little bit. For an indie, well, Finland is a very good place for public funding. There's Tekes, there's AVEC, there's of course Nordic Game Program, there's Creative Europe and so forth. All of these have different requirements, but yeah, be good with your presentations, be good with your words, be very, very good with your concept art, be good with your business plan. It really depends on where you apply for funding and what they're looking for. But yes, ultimately, you will need to use your own savings to get the game to at least that vertical slice part. And then if you want to take off as a company beyond that and get public funding, support funding to take it to an actual product, then yeah, use that demo and your slick skills with words and pictures to drive your point.
Funding, there's a lot of funding flowing to the Finnish game industry right now. Global money, as well as new types of funding and new funds, new venture funds forming in Finland. So that means for an experienced team that has a track record and a solid business plan, there's more money available right now than ever before for the Finnish startups, because everybody in the world knows that this is where the good startups in the game industry are coming from right now. But if you don't have a track record, none of these guys find you investable. You're non-investable. They just don't have anything to give them any sort of warm and fuzzy feeling that they'll ever see their money again. And you have to remember, people who it's called venture money for a reason, because that money is going on adventure with you guys. If they want a guaranteed 30% or doubling their money, they're not going to put it on a venture fund. They're going to put it on a much more secure investments. The people who put money in venture funds, they want to multiply their money with a big multiplier. And that's what they need to see in your business plan. So business plan needs to be ambitious, and if you don't have a ready product to show them, then you better have a solid team that they can believe in. It's sort of like name dropping. We worked in these games and these companies before, and then the investors understand it. They're like, oh, okay, so you're the guy who invented Minecraft, here's my money. That's just the situation. So yes, Jani is right. Sometimes vertical slice is enough. They say, that looks really promising. When you finish the game, come to us. If you have a ready-made game and it's good, it's much easier to get money for solving the discoverability problem, i.e. marketing money and user acquisition money. How many of you know how user acquisition works in mobile? So of course there's the organic user acquisition, which is just a fancy way of saying word of mouth and everything else, that people find your game and they download it for one reason or another. And then there's traditional marketing where you put the brand name out there so people know about it. But there's also a different kind of user acquisition, and that's what people usually mean when they talk about user acquisition. And that means you're paying somebody that they get you a download. Say I pay to Rovio €5 or €7 for every download I get through the ad that they have for my game in their game. And there's companies who specialize in this. But the trend there is that these prices are going higher and higher. A couple of years ago, it was very profitable to even do a shitty game and just buy a lot of downloads for it, and then people would spend money on it. But now, consumers are getting smarter. There's a lot of good games out there, so it doesn't pay you to buy users for bad games because they're not going to spend money on those when they're in the game. And the prices per download are going up, so that means you need to get more money from each user that you're buying for it, otherwise you're losing money. Say, if your average player spends €5 in your game lifetime, and you have to pay €7 for for them to download your game in the first place, you're losing €2 per every player. Now that's not really a business. But it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's making it harder for people to buy users, but the good thing about it is that means the shitty games are having harder time with it. The better your game is, the more viable you are in the market. So I believe it's actually going to reduce the number of shitty games, and we see more quality titles out there. But it still means that that's the sort of money you can get from funder, even if you don't have a track record. If you have an awesome game, and they can believe that you can get value for that game, then they can fund your marketing and user acquisition for you. That was a long answer, but I wanted people to understand what they mean when they talk about user acquisition. So there's different kinds of user acquisition, and one of them is actually buying downloads for your game.
It also helps if your game has candy or saga or epic
You'll get
or
sued.
dragons in it.
Or clan.
Always.
Or clan.
You will so get sued if you put candy or saga in your game. Obviously.
Birds are good. Flappy Birds and Angry Birds and
Flappy Fish I saw the other day.
yeah.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add to these gentlemen's answers about getting the funding for your game, except for the obvious that you know that Rovio is also a publisher, so you can come to us, ask for the help for the getting your game published. Typically, you do need to have a pretty much final ready game. So as far as I know, we don't kind of fund ideas. We need to have something that is pretty solid for publishing already. But anyway, I'm not directly involved in the program, but I can get you connected with people who are.
Well, side note, we were talking about not only user acquisition, but something connected to that is that you have to make money from the users' monetization. So we were talking in the Paradox office, how do we monetize our gamers? And our idea behind it is to monetize a positive behavior. When people want to spend their money, they will have the opportunity to spend their money. So we're not monetizing frustration that they need to buy something to improve something, like get instant gratification. You're dead, buy a new life. That's not how we work. And the reason for that is very simple. We're talking longevity of brands. We're talking about long-term building of IP. Atari went bankrupt for the 28th time or something 2 years ago. The administration was finished this summer, so I sent our CFO to New York to make a bid for the Masters of Orion brand. Do you remember Masters of Orion? Yeah, all of you almost. And I said to him, you know what, don't bid more than $1 million, but we'll stop at, say, 1.2, and we'll get it probably at 400,000, so no, never mind. He calls me from the auction room and he says, you know what, Wargaming is here. And I said, oh, fuck it. You might just walk out of there with a white flag. And that's what happened. It ended at 1.6 million because everyone else just folded. I don't know how much further they would have gone, but obviously Master of Orion, 10 years after release, 12 I think, after release of Master of Orion 3, which was a shit game to begin with. It was only Master of Orion 2 that was really the best one. And then we started asking in the office, how much would we pay for Farmville, the IP? How much is it worth to anyone? Well, probably nothing, to be honest. Never $1 million, not in a million years. Because the feelings that you get from here when playing Farmville is equal to frustration and to something that has nothing to do with positive feelings for the brand. So if you're talking building a brand long term, you also have to consider how do you treat the gamers in the game long term. That's a very long story there about a very short. Yeah. Bam.
Did Jani have something?
Yeah, just as a kind of a quick rewind to if you're in India and you want to get started, and then how do you do that? Like elaborating that a little bit. Be just one person or two person. Don't go more than 3 people. Right. I mean, 2 weeks ago I would have said that just get Unity, but now you have your choice of engine of your dreams. Work on something stupidly entertaining. Honestly, just don't go poetic prose and epic incredibilities. Just go for something that's entertaining in a silly way. I mean, that's like the trend right now. And when you're finished, all this advice will be poor and obsolete anyway. But right, I mean, if for right now you would do something, then just get something silly, crude, and entertaining out there, and just get it out there. Don't charge for it. Just make it free. Have it on green light and see how the internet now works, because the whole Let's Play YouTube movement that's happening, it's incredible. There hasn't been a viral discovery opportunity like that, to my knowledge, like ever. And if you can hit that, then you can build on that.
Can I just add, I'm sorry for kidnapping the mic all the time. You know how Flappy Bird became so popular, speaking about the viral things. January 27, PewDiePie played Flappy Bird. Before then, no one played Flappy Bird. And all of a sudden, everyone played it in a matter of 2 weeks. True story.
How many of you have finished a game project? Have you distributed it somehow to people you don't know yet who have played it? Okay, so you've passed the first hurdle. For the rest, get your first game done and out as fast as possible. Because when you start working on your first game, you think you know what you're doing and you're polishing it and you want to make your baby the perfect one. But guess what? Once you've released the first one, you realize how many mistakes you did with your first game. And the next one is going to be even better. Even no matter how cool your idea is right now, you can come up with a better idea and a better game the second time around. You just need to get the first one out of your system so you can get to learning what it is to actually put a game out there. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
You're the most indie of us, so.
Yeah, like every new game is a new set of mistakes.
Just make different mistakes every time, not the same ones.
There's actually one thing I wanted to add, that there's a zillion games out there, so discoverability is actually not your only problem. So once people find your game, they need to stick to it. And typically people take a look at the game and they never come back. So like your day one retention rates are usually pretty low, and like it even gets lower from that. So it's vitally important to get the people hooked like straight away. And introduce them to the gameplay. I was recently playing a game whose name I don't want to mention here, but it was way too complex. I kind of thought that it gave me like an instruction screen with almost a dozen buttons, with titles telling me which or what all of these buttons do. And for me, that tells that the user interface is way too complex. It looks complex. And then the whole gameplay must be complex because there's a shitload of stuff that you need to control and follow in this game. So I just went away. I never came back to that game.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the first game, that if I have a good game idea, do you think that I should maybe come up with another, and which is much more simpler to make and publish it, so I don't like waste my first idea if it's good or something like that? When you said that your first game, just make it out of the way. Yes and no. Make your first game as simple as you can and get that done and release it. Even if it's a red ball bouncing around. Red bird. Or red bird. Funnily, the same company made both games. They like the color red. Sorry. But yeah, make it as simple as you can so you can get the first game out and release. But don't worry about the idea, because ideas are, at the end of the day, ideas are cheap. Execution is what matters.
Amen.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I mean. I have ideas, but should I just make the simplest one to, you know, produce the product or something?
Yes. Yeah. And funnily enough, in looking at Flappy Birds and Paper Chump and whatnot, you know, don't polish it too much. Just get it out there, and you learn a lot by releasing your first game and seeing, oh my God, how was I so stupid? Why did I make that mistake? And then the next one, you make different mistakes, like Jani said.
Yeah, remember, Flappy Bird was that guy's third game. So the first two, I don't know how simple they were.
It was without the bird, it was only the pipe.
Cheers. If I may add to that, having seen quite a few projects already, having the game idea as simple as possible at first, then you're building on success. You're adding on your game. If you have too complicated a game at the start, you're just going to be frustrated and leaving things out and running out of time, and you're gonna burn yourself out before you get anything out. So keep it simple, but my 5 cents.
Yeah, I would want to stay on the free-to-play a bit more or on the monetization models. As Jani pointed out, the user acquisition prices are rising, and if I'm not entirely mistaken, on the Christmas period, it was the average was $5. So do you think, $7, sorry. Do you think the free-to-play model is to conquer the world? Because naturally that means that it's increasingly difficult to get your money back. And if it's increasingly difficult to get your money back, then we're hurting ourselves making those games. And we're also teaching customers, players, that you don't have to pay for content. So is free-to-play on a sustainable level at the moment?
That's a good question, and I know Jani has very strong opinions about free-to-play, but if you look at free-to-play as a whole, not how it's implemented today in games, but if you look at it as a concept from a consumer point of view, here's our product, get to know it, if you like it, then you have the option of starting to invest money in it. It's, in a way, it's similar to what shareware games were doing. And the other thing that I always say is like, here is that this free-to-play is corrupting beautiful game designs. Game design is always, and he's like, yes, it is, but, and I agree. So some games, like very narrative, story-driven linear games, are hard to do with free-to-play, and other kind of games as well. But from a consumer point of view, that's a good promise. And if you look way back into the history when some of you weren't born and I was very, very young, arcades were the big thing. And in those games, it's all designed around you putting a new quarter in at a regular interval. If you didn't put enough quarters in, that cabinet went away and a more greedy cabinet came in instead in that arcade space, because that arcade owner needed to make money as well. So games design has always been close to the business model. If you look at board games, you have limitations. I mean, some games have just boring-looking little cardboard pieces in the box instead of fancy figures. Why? Because they can make the cost of goods cheaper, and they can sell the game to you cheaper, and they can sell more units that way. So every game design is influenced by the business model. So it's not corrupting, it's just, of course, limiting certain designs. But that being said, I don't believe the current free-to-play is the end-all, that all games will become this business model. I think that we're smart enough to come up with different kinds of business models for different kinds of games in the future.
I think we already did. They were called paid games. We had them for a while. But truth be told, like picking up from there, the like again, Gone Home, Dear Esther, Stanley Parable, Papers, Please. I mean, all great indie games right out there. They wouldn't be improved by energy timers. So what I would like to kind of hope to see in the future is a return to this very simple, I guess it's called principle. I've heard it misquoted so many times. I don't really know what's the original one, but there's the 1,000 true fans principle. That for any indie band, you don't want to shoot for a million wide audience. You actually want to find 1,000 people who are your true fans, who buy your album, who buy your t-shirt, and who come to your concert every time, like they drive 200 miles to just see or hear you. And what would this be in game design principle is that, for example, I still don't understand why iTunes doesn't allow me to subscribe to artists or game developers. I don't need to know or try out the latest game from Halfbreak. Just give it to me. I'll pay $5 straight away just to play it. I know that it's good. I know those guys do that thing. Simogo, Illusion Labs. Like, I know them. I trust them. I would buy from them without any question. And iTunes doesn't give me any kind of notification that, hey, by the way, there's a new album from Madonna. Like, would I? Okay, not Madonna, but you get the idea that. Yes,
you totally look like Madonna guy.
So there are these ways that we can improve the distribution channels and connect the creators to their fans and allow small creative teams to have direct dialogue and kind of a direct business relationship with their fans. And I'm waiting for this thing to happen.
I see free-to-play mostly as a marketing tool to reach as many gamers as possible, and some games are better for that, just like you said. They're better suited to use that marketing method. But the whole games as a service idea is to make it possible for people who want to immerse themselves in your games for thousands of hours to pay more than only a starting fee to get a bigger experience. I played League of Legends for 100 hours before I paid my first $5 for a Super Teemo skin. That was a terrible investment, by the way. And by now, I'm up at 800 hours probably, and I paid, I hope my wife is not listening to this, over $250. Only paid when I was having fun and I was like looking forward to the next thing I was going to do in the game. And that is just, I think that's brilliant. I think it's brilliant game design. I think it's brilliant monetization. And I think it's respecting the customer, actually. And I think that can go hand in hand if you do it the right way.
Yeah, and you can make very hardcore games with that business model as well. A few years ago, I had a hard time figuring out why would anybody pay for these free-to-play games. But then I started experiencing more different kinds of free-to-play games, like The World of Tanks, a very hardcore game, which monetizes in multiple different avenues. And a lot of people pay it without paying, but they actually have a really good conversion percentage, meaning how big part of the player base actually pays money for it. And ultimately, it's knowing your target audience and making a good game for that audience, helping them find that, and then monetizing the product in a way that your customers are comfortable with. But here's a thought. Look at what Spotify is doing to music and similar services. Look at what Netflix and similar services are doing to TV and movies. Are we the next? Just as an example, that business models are not something permanent, they change. And as game creators, we need to adapt to the changes in our environment. If you want to be an indie and do it on the weekends, fine, you can do whatever you want. If you take investors on board, you're responsible for people's livelihoods who work for you. You have an obligation to make some sort of profit, just to cover the costs, if nothing else.
Yeah, Sami, as we're talking a lot about the free-to-play model and monetization, but where it's getting backlash is usually if children are buying. Like we heard earlier today that it was a big news when someone's child spent 8,000 euros on Clash of Clans. So what's your intake on free-to-play model with the games that are primarily aimed for children? Is that gonna work there? Or?
Well, actually, continuing on Jay's thought that there could be like a monthly fee. That would be one option, so there would be a cap. I also like what Jani was telling earlier today, that there was like an option to spend like $15 on these in-application purchases, and that's it. That's all we want from you. So it's kind of showing that we're not greedy. There's a sort of a cap for spending. I think it would be also good if there would be a feeling that I can let my child make purchases in this game, because there's no way they're going to make 7,000 euro purchases because there's a cap for, let's say $15 that they can use. Also talked to somebody earlier about this unlocking certain features in the game, and I heard that the most popular purchase is the one that unlocks everything. So after that, you know that the kid is not going to come back to you and ask for more money because you have already kind of unlocked everything there is in the game. So I think there are ways to design these games so that you can have a feeling that it's not going to cost you your car and your house if you let your child play this game.
Excuse me, we have a question over here.
Okay, so, whoa, this is really loud. So this is related to something that Jay was saying right now about a subscription-based service for games and for publishing games. How do you feel as game developers and publishers about a service like this? Do you think there is a future for something like this to actually exist? And how do you feel to publish your game only on a subscription-based level through a third-party service or something like that?
It would be lovely if people would pay for it, but I think that it's a business model that worked really well in 2007, and it worked really well, especially for World of Warcraft, not for that many other games, to be honest. There was a handful of games that it worked really well for. I have a hard time seeing, with the competition in the market, that a subscription-based game is gonna make a big splash today. So I don't know, it has to offer something very special.
Yes, I agree. But if a big enough player says, look, here's our whole portfolio, everything, like say Microsoft would announce at E3 that every Xbox One game will be totally free as long as you pay 20 euros to Microsoft every week, and then they give some percentage of that to developers, I think they would get a lot of customers. But it's going to be very hard to put in the deals in place so that the big boys like EA and those guys, or Supercell and those guys, whoever it is, actually get on board with that business model. So you have to have lucrative enough platform that they have to be there, and you have to have good enough deal for the developers of the games, the big guys, to be on your platform. Because if you don't have games, then why would anybody pay for the service? If developers are not getting a fair share, they are not going to be on your platform, if they have a choice. Of course, in music, you don't really have a choice. Pretty much everything is on Spotify, and boo, there you are. But yeah, I mean, I think people are going to try it. It just needs to be the right player with the right business plan, both towards the consumer and towards the developers and publishers.
For mobile space, I would be very doubtful that that could happen, because, I mean, let's be honest, with free to play, you're free to pay as much as you want. And ultimately, it is largely to do with that. The whole idea why VC funding is now flocking over to mobile is the idea that really you can get 8,000 euros out of a kid on a weekend. It's the best thing that could happen, except for that you have to pay it back, maybe, in that case.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know, but pretty much 99% of these cases of exorbitant figures, Apple pays them back. It's just never in big news because that's not sexy and it doesn't sell newspaper. But in almost all of these cases, Apple actually gives that money back when something huge like that happens.
I was mentioning this idea of having a voluntary parental lock in a game as a sign of goodwill, and I think that might work as well. So if you would have like a kid lock, so that allows your kids to spend, let's say, 15 euros a month in a game, but then that could be switched off. So if you are really a big spender, you are free to spend 1,500 euros on in-application purchases, then that would be possible as well.
Yeah, we have talked a lot about financing, I think. All of these topics have been circling around the same topic, and I had so many other topics prepared. But I still want to ask everyone's opinion on crowdfunding. Many of the gamers love it, but it's still like a small fraction of the overall chunk of money related to games. Is it going to grow, and in 5 years, how important do you think crowdfunding is, particularly if you don't have a famous team to work with?
We've discussed this a lot in the Paradox office as well, and crowdfunding, I mean, after all the money that we pay as salaries every month comes from someone who pays. And it's the same thing with crowdfunding, basically. The biggest difference is that you make a promise to deliver a game at an early stage, and not being both a developer and publisher. We have 4 in-house studios. I know how hard it is to make promises at an early stage of a game development process. And that's what kept us so far from doing any crowdfunding at all. We could do it for a sequel. It looks a bit cheap maybe to do that. But I think crowdfunding is going to grow as a concept. And I think it's a good way to reach out. But gamers also feel like they own your brand when they crowdfund you. They haven't read, surprisingly, all the terms of service that you get on Kickstarter. Look at the whole Oculus Rift getting bought by Facebook thing, where people say, I want my money back. It's like, sorry, man, read the terms of service. I mean, you've pledged money to a thing that you can't control. And I know it's a frustrating feeling, but once we get over those hurdles, I think crowdfunding is going to be working better.
I actually think Oculus just should give people their money back with some interest, just for the good PR they would gain from that.
Yeah, well, with the money they got from Facebook, I think they could afford it as well. So I totally agree with that.
So that's just stupid not to buy that cheap PR, basically. But there's going to be a backlash. I think crowdfunding is going to grow, and it's a viable option if you have a team with some name. I mean, if you're Tim Schafer, it's pretty easy. If you're Chris Roberts, it's pretty easy. If you're a guy from Oulu, maybe not so easy. Nothing against guys or Oulu, but that's just the way it is. But there's going to be a backlash, because a lot of these, what the crowdfunding individuals don't understand is how hard it is to make a good game, how many things can go wrong, even when you have great people and a great idea. Publishers and other people who do it professionally, investors, they have a better idea, but they still make stupid investments at times. But a lot of these people expect every single one of these games to be as great as they imagine it in their heads. And a lot of these games are never going to come out, and some of them are going to be bad. And so a lot of people are going to be disappointed over the next few years when their crowdfunded stuff isn't what they thought it was. Now, that's probably not going to kill crowdfunding, but it is going to cause a backlash that's going to affect it in the short term, at least.
The way I see crowdfunding is that it's typically a bunch of individuals who see something so cool that they want to see it done, like the Oculus Rift. So the idea is so cool that I want to get this product, and it doesn't necessarily matter whether I'm going to make a big profit out of it. I just want to get it done, which is very different from how the VC money works. So they want to get like a big return on investment. So in that sense, I see crowdfunding existing also in the future. Also, it's a good test for market. So like if you want to make a game of like ducks hunts with wings, then if you go to a venture capitalist and say that I want to create this sort of a game, they might say no. But then if there's a niche with like enough people who are really into ducks hunts with wings, then you might get your funding that way. So there's actually an audience that nobody knew about.
Yeah, I really wish that the Finnish government would really get off their asses and clear this thing for Finland as well, like access to Kickstarter and being able to run Kickstarter campaigns. I mean, yes, there are risks involved. There's risk involved in everything. The protectionism around that particular topic, it is hurting Finnish IT industry. There's no other way to put that. That being said, people have funny expectations. Not just Kickstarter, but Steam early access. For some, early access means that because you get it early, it's free. No. Or that it's early access, so you get the full game, but earlier. And then dealing with these expectations is again a point of frustration.
I can round it off. We have touched a bit on Kickstarter actually since we're bringing Obsidian's game Pillars of Eternity to market later this year. Did anyone back Pillars of Eternity here on Kickstarter? Yeah, a few. Thank you. I'm not seeing any of that money. I just want to be very clear about that. But I think that is also a very good cooperation because we discussed that. It started half a year ago at the bar, as all good games conversation starts in a bar later tonight, for example. And they said, you know what, we don't have a clue how to take this to market. We got all the money for actually developing the game. How are we going to do this? So we did a really good cooperation. We said, you know what, we'll chip in marketing money on top of that. So I think there are a lot of synergies to be made from Kickstarter as well. Once you have the funding there, you have a very good upside against the publisher or an investor once you're there. Now, Obsidian has been making role-playing games for 15 years, so they're in a different spot. But still, once you get there, it's really good to see, like, what are my strengths? What can I actually do? And what do I need help to do to make this game a success?
So, quick short answer from everyone. Should guys in Oulu pay attention business-wise on crowdfunding at the moment or the next year or two? Yes or no?
Yes. Avoid Kickstarter, check out Indiegogo.
Do it and be crazy. A guy from my hometown, Umeå, he made this trailer, Kang Fury. Have you seen that? Yeah, he raised a lot of money for them. I'm not sure it's even going to be a movie, but the trailer in itself, I probably watched it 10 times, and I sent it to everyone I know, and it has like 5 million views on YouTube. So dare to be crazy and stand out, because that's going to be a key if you're a guy in Oulu, right?
Yeah, so shout out to Reset Game and the successful Indiegogo campaign that they run. So yeah, just what Jay said, steer clear of Kickstarter, check out Indiegogo, and make sure that you sell pre-orders.
And my answer is also yes, so what do you get to lose?
Yeah, then whenever we've seen a new platform rise that brings on new gamers, we see that at the beginning it's very casual, and then it starts swifting towards more core games. So what is the next big thing on player behavior that you expect to see in the next couple of years? That do the games get more core, or is the smart TV or some other new platform going to change that? Do you see any changes on how players play or consume on games?
Well, we don't discuss platforms as much anymore. We discuss more input devices, like how do you actually control the game. As we see it, we have 3 different ways at the moment, which is a typical gamepad, Xbox, PlayStation. You have a touch screen or touch interface, and you have a mouse and keyboard. And how you develop the game is dependent on the input devices, not necessarily on the OS anymore. And I think hopefully all the OSs are going to run with different input devices, and then you have more choice on how to develop the game. Was that even an answer to your question?
Good enough.
After VR, there will be nothing else.
Facebook.
So I'm guessing you guys are making a VR game.
I wish.
Maybe you should if you believe in VR. What was the question? All this smart assing.
Any changes in player behavior in the next few years?
Well, I look at it from mobile perspective because that's where my mindset is right now for obvious reason. And the platform is getting huge. And the bigger the platform, the more people there are on that platform that you're supporting, the more diverse the player base is going to be. So depending what sort of product you can do, you can target more niche when you have more people on the platform. And you can target more specific audiences, like World War history fans, or people who like red birds, or people who like The Walking Dead. Whatever it is, you can target more focused audiences when you have a bigger platform. Once everybody in the world is on the same platform, you have even more choice on how you target your product. Then you just have to find the right consumers.
My answer is going to be a bit biased because I wrote my PhD on interacting like out there in the wild, like while driving and walking. And so, but I've been following these kind of technology trends, what's happening. And one interesting development that is clearly happening is the wearables. So I would pay attention to that. So in a similar manner as the Microsoft, the Xbox Smart Glass works, you have the game on the console, but part of the game can be actually in your phone. And this game could be extended so that you don't have to be at home. The game continues somewhere out there, and you get a phone call in your phone created by the game, and then something happens, like extending the narrative of the game. In a similar manner, in your smart watches could be like part of the whole game system. So it would be interesting to see more games developing this way, that it's not like on your console alone that you're playing in your living room, or on your mobile device alone where you are kind of playing on the single device, but games spreading or extending through multiple devices that are used like in different situations in your day.
How do you? Let's take an audience question.
Just a comment. I was about input devices. I would see very strong indication that someday, I don't know how far future, but the kinetic Xbox kind of just movement, and then it would be the tablets or whatever. Can I? Okay. So expect kinetic. I think it's like in the sport games and many other games. It's really big thing, and I think that would be really good way to go in also the mobile devices and those when the technology goes small enough. But that would be what good input, and I would see that in the future.
So you could have a smartwatch and detecting your gestures and all that. So
you can just point it or something.
Yeah, as I said, these sort of wearables and kind of connecting you to the world, that is an interesting development that could be utilized also in mobile.
Yeah, next question I have for the audience. How many of you are working in a startup or plan to work in a game startup? Raise your hand. So the final quick questions for all of you. What should those guys do? What's your best advice? Where should they put their effort on that hasn't been covered yet?
Follow your passion.
As long as it's VR.
I mentioned those two options you have earlier. Choose clearly which one you want to be. The indie that makes it for the passion of just do because you're doing it, or if you're about creating a business and a company. Those are two different paths, and you need to choose, and everybody who's starting that company or group together with you, you all need to agree on that, which way you want to go. And then when you've decided that, look yourself into the mirror and ask yourself, why am I doing this? If the answer is because I want to make awesome games, then don't be the CEO, hire a CEO and focus on making the awesome game. That's what our founders did. They hired Teemu so they can make awesome games.
And stay lean, so don't try to do everything at once, but kind of start from small and then build gradually from there.
About VR, that was really a joke. Like, don't do that now. Really, don't. The problems that people are discovering in that platform are only materializing. Like, the discussions over on Steam Dev Days were about stuff like, what if the NPCs don't look at you in the eye the correct way? And that's not the kind of problem field that you want to tackle as an indie.
I think that VR could be a disruptive technology, and a lot of the companies that boomed in 2007, 2008, 2009, including Rovio, sitting over here, came from disruptive technologies where the big guys, EA, Ubisoft, were not fast enough to move. So I don't think VR is necessarily a bad bet, because if you're going to make it super big, we're talking Minecraft big or Rovio big, you need to use a disruptive technology to do that. Because otherwise you're not going to make it that big. You're not going to make it that big on mobile starting from zero now. I don't think so, at least. The chance is at least very, very small. But taking a bet on one or a few new technologies might actually make it if the technology makes it.
Yes, if. But there's a difference between cutting edge and bleeding edge. It's good to be on the cutting edge. On the bleeding edge, it hurts like son of a bitch. And this guy here knows. There's a company called Fat Hammer. Awesome company, awesome technology, wanted to make visually impressive 3D games for mobile, raised money, but they were too early. They went away about 9 months before the first iPhone came out. If they would have started their company 2-3 years later, they'd probably be one of the major players in the mobile market today. So just one example of being on the bleeding edge instead of on the cutting edge. These guys were on the cutting edge when iPhone came out. Supercell was on the cutting edge when tablets came out.
Yeah, so here you see a broken husk of a miserable man.
And then you end up here.
Yeah, and then you end up giving talks about indie development.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I'm still going like back to VR one more time. There was Doom, there was Quake, there will be that game that defines virtual reality for so many who experience it for the first time. I don't think that it's going to be the Call of Duty VR edition. It's going to be something ground up, designed, interesting, new, fresh, that really works in that context. And if you can do that with your 3-person team, just figure out exactly the right art style, the right concept, the right game, then, well, I mean, you can go bankrupt after you've done that, but you've done that.
Yeah, I also wanted to continue on the VR. So you also need to figure out innovative uses for the new technology. So I recently saw a demo made on the Oculus Rift by the Target, the retail shops in the US. And they were basically replicating the inside of a store. All the shelves and everything were in there. And they were claiming that this was like a good way to market. And I was like, what the hell? They're completely copying the physical store. So how boring is that? On the other hand, another demo I saw on the Oculus Rift was that there was it wasn't a VR game as such, so it was not a first-person shooter, but it showed a room where there was a person who was representing you, sitting on a sofa, playing on a virtual TV in front of the character, and there was a game. So basically you were using controls to play the game on the screen, so it showed like yourself. And the idea was that it was a horror game. So all of a sudden you started hearing stuff from coming around you. So there was steps, there was a knock at the door, but there was nobody there. And then there were steps going around in the building. So actually it was really more horrifying than any horror game that I've ever experienced, because I really felt that I am the guy sitting on the sofa and then there was stuff happening around me.
All right, thank you guys. I think we need to start wrapping things up. So let's give a big applause for our panelists. Frankly, I love panels. It's always a pleasure to follow a good discussion. But before you go, please stay on your seats for one last presentation and a sneak peek for the evening event, so 2 more stuff. So we do have one alternative way to fund a game startup by Neppis Racing Team or their founder. So let's see what the Neppis guys are doing to fund their game.
We all have a common problem with our phones. Mobile phone chargers always consume power when you leave them plugged in, even if there's no phone connected to it. In 1 year, for every mobile charger you own, you pay for 8,000 watts of wasted energy. With this amount of power, you could make 450 full pots of coffee, enough for a year and a half of early morning cups. With the same amount of power, you could keep your laptop running for 260 hours. Or you may as well leave your lights on for a full month. Let's think about this problem on a global scale. There are almost 7 billion mobile phones in the world. To use the power we waste for leaving the chargers plugged in, we need the equivalent of 2 nuclear power plants. Compared to windmill power, we'd need 25,000 wind power plants. And if you're really feeling green, you'd need to cover the entire state of Michigan with solar panels to even make enough power for these device chargers. Last but not least, because these chargers are always on, there's also the risk of fire. We've created a solution for this problem, called the Osmo Charger. The Osmo is the only truly intelligent charger. The Osmo Charger starts up automatically when you attach your phone and shuts down automatically when you unplug your phone from the charger. The Osmo Charger uses a small amount of current from your phone's own battery to begin the charging. That's why it won't waste any power when you leave it plugged in after charging. And it's also fire safe. This one is a no-brainer. The Osmo Charger. No waste, no risk, no fuss, just charging. Get your own. Visit our webpage at www.osmocharger.com.
Is Osmo still in the audience? All right. So please stand up. So this is the guy. This is the guy.
Yeah, so talk about passion. If they are making inventions and if they manage to sell this invention, then Neppis Racing will grow. Or that's what Osmo is telling us here in Oulu, that he won't leave us from the game industry. Let's hope we believe him.
All right, if you want to talk to Osmo about Neppis Racing or the charger, then give him a shout. But I think we're just about done for the day. It's been a long day. It's been a brilliant day. We've had some seriously great speeches in the panels, but the day is still not over yet. So there's the after party, of course. The after party has been actually rescheduled, so it's starting half an hour earlier than scheduled. It's starting at 7 o'clock at the Business Kitchen, Torikatu 23. Those of you who don't know the place, I'm sure there's plenty of people going there, so somebody will give you a hand. From my part, thank you again. This was the third Game Spring. We're looking forward to the fourth and fifth and whatnot. And thank you for our speakers. Thank you for coming. Jussi, the final words.
Only for speakers that we have organized transportation for you guys to the city center.
And by the way, the App Campus Unity Porting Lab is still going strong, so you still have time to head there, and I think the cave is still open as well. So check it out. Thanks for dropping by.